I march around back, and there it was, my yard torn open, a pool house frame rising where my tomatoes once grew. Bulldozers, concrete, chaos, all on my land, uninvited. Dave said it was the HOA Karen, but who gave them the guts to steal what's mine? And why now when I'd been gone? Something big was brewing, and I was about to find out. Hang on, the storm's just starting. Could you drop me a like? It's a huge boost for me, and I'm so grateful for you all. Let's dive in. The late afternoon sun spilled golden light across my corner lot, casting long shadows from the oak trees that had been here longer than I had. My three-bedroom house sat snug on the edge of Elmwood Heights, a quiet suburban patch I'd claimed back in the 80s when a neighborhood was more dirt than driveways. Back then, it was just me, a hammer, and a pile of lumber, building this place from the ground up with my own hands. No HOA, no nosy neighbors, just open space and folks who'd wave if you caught their eye on the street. I'd sit on the porch after a day's work, sipping sweet tea, listening to the crickets kick up their nightly song. That was my kind of peace, hard-earned, simple mine. I picked this spot because it was cheap and big, a sprawling yard that stretched out like a promise of freedom. No fancy landscaping, just grass I kept short enough, and a garden out back where I'd tinker with tomatoes when the mood struck. The house wasn't much to look at. White siding, a sloped roof, a garage stuffed with tools, and an old Mustang I swore I'd fix someday. But it was my castle. No one told me how to live here, and I liked it that way. Back in my Marine days, I'd fought for the right to call something my own, and this land was it. That all started shifting years back when the newcomers rolled in. Shiny SUVs replaced rusty pickups, and cul-de-sacs sprouted where fields once stood. With them came the whispers of an HOA, some self-righteous crew bent on protecting property values and community standards. I heard them knocking on doors, clipboard in hand, preaching about rules and dues. When they got to me, I met him on the porch, arms crossed, and gave it straight. No thanks. My shutters are fine blue, my grass is fine green, and I don't need your say-so. The woman leading the charge, Lena, with her short blonde hair and a smile too sweet to trust, tried her pitch. Tom, don't you want a voice in the neighborhood? She cooed. I just snorted. Got a voice. Use it the ballot box. This is my land, not your playground. She left with a huff, but I figured that'd be the end of it. It wasn't. They formed their little club anyway. And at first, it was just petty nonsense. Notes taped to my door griping about my unruly lawn or how my Christmas lights didn't match their aesthetic. I'd toss them in the trash and keep on living. But they got bolder. One summer day, I came home to find Lena and some guy in my backyard, measuring my fence with a tape like they owned the place. What the hell's this? I barked, storming over. Lena turned, her red blouse bright against the green, lips pursed in that smug way she had. Just ensuring your fence meets HOA standards, Tom. 6 feet max. Rules are rules. I felt my fist clench. I ain't in your HOA, and this ain't your yard. Get out before I make you. She sniffed, muttered something about standards, and they skedaddled. I thought I'd won that round. Years ticked by, and their jabs kept coming. City complaints about fake violations. A tow truck eyeing my Mustang. Even someone painted my mailbox while I was at the store. I'd push back every time. Cops for trespassing, letters to the city, a few choice words when I caught him in the act. It wore me down, sure, but I'd be damned if I let him bully me into their fold. My land, my rules. That's how it stayed. Then last year, I took a 6-month gig overseas. Good money, tough hours, but it meant leaving the house in Dave's hands, my old Marine buddy who'd swing by to mow the lawn and keep an eye out. I was 4 months in, halfway across the world, when my phone buzzed late one night. Dave's voice crackled through, tense and rushed. Tom, you ain't gonna believe this. There's construction in your backyard. Bulldozers, concrete, the works. Looks like a pool or something. My gut dropped like a stone. Construction? On my land. Dave stammered. Yeah, I asked, and they said it's HOA business, permits and all. What the hell, man? I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the dark hotel ceiling. Rage simmered, slow and hot, as the pieces clicked. Lena, the HOA. They'd waited till I was gone to pull this, building on my property like thieves in the night. Dave, I said, voice steady despite the fire inside. Call the cops? trespassing, vandalism now. Get pictures, videos, everything. I'm coming home. I hung up, booked the next flight, and let the anger carry me. They'd crossed the line, and I'd bury him for it. The plane's engines droned in my ears as I stared out the tiny window, clouds streaking past like ghosts in the night. 24 hours of flights, layovers, and lukewarm coffee had me running on fumes, but the fire in my chest kept me sharp. Dave's call replayed in my head. Bulldozers tearing up my yard, concrete mixers churning, the HOA claiming my land like pirates planting a flag. Lena's smug face floated behind every thought, her red blouse a taunting blur. I gripped the armrest, knuckles white, picturing my quiet corner lot turned into some gaudy clubhouse. They'd picked the wrong guy to mess with. I landed at dawn, the sky a bruised purple over Elmwood Heights. The cab ride home felt endless. Every stoplight a delay, every tertiz. My fingers drummed the seat, itching to see the damage with my own eyes. When the driver finally pulled into my driveway, I slung my duffel over my shoulder and stepped out, the familiar crunch of gravel under my boots grounding me for a split second. Then I saw it, or smelled it first. Diesel fumes and fresh dirt hit me like a slap, wafting from behind the house. I dropped the bag and marched around back, heart pounding like a war drum. The sight stopped me cold. My backyard, my green, open stretch of freedom, was a war zone. Half the lawn was gone, gouged out by heavy treads, replaced with a skeletal frame of what looked like a pool house. Rebar jutted up like twisted bones. Concrete slabs gleamed wet in the morning light, and a pile of lumber sprawled across what used to be my tomato patch. A bulldozer sat parked near the fence, its yellow paint mocking me, while stacks of tiles and pipes littered the grass. I could still see the outline of my old yard, but it was fading fast under their mess. A guy in a hard hat wandered near the construction, clipboard in hand, oblivious to the storm brewing in me. I stormed over, boots kicking clods of dirt. "Hey," I barked, voice rough from lack of sleep. "Who's running this circus?" He blinked, startled, then pointed to a white pickup parked by the garage. Mr. Stevens, the foreman, he's over there." I didn't wait for more, beelining for the truck, my shadow stretching long and mean across the torn-up ground. Stevens rolled down his window as I rapped on it, a bushy mustache framing a frown. "Can I help you?" he said, tone clipped like I was the nuisance. "Yeah," I growled, leaning in close. "You can tell me why the hell you're building on my land." His brow furrowed, confusion flickering. "Your land?" "Buddy, this is HOA common property. We've got permits, contracts, the works. Take it up with them." I felt the heat rise in my face, words tumbling out sharp. "HOA, this is my private property, been mine for decades. You've got no right, and I want your gear off my lawn now." He sighed, rubbing his temple like I was a headache he didn't sign up for. "Look, I'm just a hired help. Got orders and papers from the HOA. Talk to Lena if you've got beef. We're not stopping till she says so." I straightened, glaring. "You'll hear from my lawyer. Wrap this up quick, or you'll wish you had." He shrugged, unimpressed, and I turned away, pulling my phone from my pocket. Time to call in the big guns. Dave met me out front, his pickup idling by the mailbox, face grim as he climbed out. "Told you it was bad," he said, handing me a stack of photos, snapshots of the chaos, workers, even a glimpse of Lena directing traffic days ago, her blonde hair unmistakable. "Cops came, took a report, but said it's civil till you sort it. Got video, too. She's on tape saying they'd deal with you while you were gone." I flipped through the pics, each one fueling a fire. "Good work, Dave," I muttered. "They think I'm some pushover they can steamroll. They're wrong." I dialed my lawyer, Frank, a bulldog I'd known since my service days, mean as hell when it mattered. "Frank, it's Tom," I said when he picked up. "HOA's building a damn pool house on my property. Trespassing, vandalism, the works. I need an injunction. Yesterday." His gruff laugh crackled through. "Sounds like fun. Send me everything, photos, deeds, whatever you've got. We'll bury him." I hung up, glancing back at the mess. The sun climbed higher, glinting off the concrete, but all I saw was red. Lena thought she'd won by sneaking this while I was gone. She'd learn soon enough. I don't back down, and I don't lose what's mine. The morning air hung heavy with the scent of torn earth and diesel as I stood in my driveway, staring at the half-built monstrosity eating my backyard. The pool house frame loomed like a bad joke, concrete drying in uneven slabs, rebar spiking up through the dirt where my garden used to thrive. I could still hear the echo of Steven's shrug, his take it up with the HOA rattling in my skull. My hands itched to rip the whole thing down myself, but I knew better. Fists wouldn't win this. I needed proof, paper, and a plan. Lena and her crew had ambushed me, but I'd hit back harder. Dave lingered nearby, leaning against his pickup, flipping through the photos he'd snapped. "Got a good one here," he said, holding up a shot of Lena in her red blouse, pointing at workers like a queen directing her court. Her short blonde hair caught the sunlight, her face twisted in that smug way I'd come to hate. "She's on video too, bragging about fixing you while you were gone." Cocky as hell. I took the picture, studying it, the anger simmering into something colder, sharper. "Perfect," I said, pocketing it. "Frank's gonna love this." Inside, I spread my ammo across the kitchen table. Deed to the house, crisp and yellowed from decades back, tax records, every scrap proving this land was mine. Dave had emailed me the videos, and I played one on my laptop, sound crackling through the speakers. There was Lena, standing by my fence, voice shrill. "Tom's been a thorn too long. While he's off playing soldier, we'll take care of this once and for all." The camera caught her smirk, workers nodding like she'd just handed down gospel. I paused it, her face frozen mid-gloat, and felt a grim satisfaction. She'd dug her own grave. She just didn't know it yet. Frank called back by noon, his voice rough as gravel. "Got your stuff, Tom. Deed solid. Photos are gold in that video. She's toast. Filing for an emergency injunction today to stop the build. Lawsuits next. Trespassing, damage, fraud, the works. You sitting on anything else?" I glanced at Dave, who nodded. "Yeah," I said. "Years of their crap. Notes, complaints, trespassing logs. I'll dig it up." Frank chuckled, dark and low. "Good. Send it over. We'll make him bleed." The rest of the day was a blur of digging through old files, shoeboxes stuffed with HOA nonsense I kept for reasons I couldn't explain till now. Passive-aggressive letters about my non-compliant mailbox, city violation notices they'd faked, even a photo I'd snapped of Lena's paint can by my garage after the mailbox died. Each piece was a brick in the wall I'd build to crush them. Dave helped, hauling boxes from the garage, his quiet curses matching mine as we unearthed their petty war. "They're nuts," he muttered, holding up a note about my unsightly Mustang. "Who cares this much about a car?" I snorted. "Lena does, controls her drug." By dusk, I'd sent Frank everything, the email heavy with years of their garbage. The backyard sat quiet now. No workers, just the hum of crickets reclaiming the night. I stepped outside, beer in hand, and stared at the mess. The pool house frame glowed faintly under the moon, a scar on my land I'd erase soon enough. I could almost hear Lena's voice, that syrupy tone she'd used years ago on my porch, twisting into the venom on Dave's tape. She'd planned this, waited till I was gone, thinking I'd roll over. She didn't know me at all. The phone buzzed, Frank again. "Injunctions filed," he said. "Judge'll see it tomorrow. Construction's on hold till then. Cops'll enforce it if they try anything. Lawsuits shaping up nasty. HOA's claiming your land's common property. Some backdated deed crap. It's flimsy. I'll shred it." I grinned, the first real one in days. "Thanks, Frank. Latch is booty and jeepy." He laughed. "Oh, we will. Sleep tight. They're in for a hell of a wake-up." I hung up, leaning against the porch rail, the beer cold against my palm. The neighborhood slept, lights winking out in houses down the street, but I felt wide awake. Lena thought she'd outsmarted me, turned my absence into her victory. She'd misjudged a Marine. My land wasn't just dirt. It was blood, sweat, and a fight I'd never lose. The storm was gathering, and I'd bring it right to her doorstep. Tomorrow, the real battle started. The courthouse smelled of old wood and stale coffee, a squat brick building tucked between Elmwood Heights Diner and a hardware store. I sat in the front row, hands resting on my knees, the hum of fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Frank stood beside me, flipping through a stack of papers, his tie crooked but his grin sharp as a blade. Across the room, Lena perched at the defendant's table, her red blouse swapped for a stiff blazer, blonde hair pulled back tight. She kept her eyes forward, avoiding mine, but I could feel the heat of her simmering rage. The half-built pool house lingered in my mind, rebar and concrete scarring my yard, and today, I'd rip it out by the roots. The judge banged his gavel, a grizzled man with a face carved from years of small-town squabbles. Case of Johnson versus Elmwood HOA. Emergency injunction and damages, he rumbled, peering over his glasses. Frank stepped up, voice steady. Your Honor, my client, Tom Johnson, owns the property in question, decades of clear title. The HOA, led by Lena Carter, trespassed and began unauthorized construction while he was overseas. We've got deeds, photos, video, irrefutable proof. He slid Dave's evidence across the bench. Snapshots of bulldozers, Lena's smug face on tape, my deed inked in black and white. Lena's lawyer, a slick guy with too much gel in his hair, jumped in, waving a sheaf of papers. Your Honor, this land's been designated HOA common property, deeded to us years ago for community use. Mr. Johnson's claim is outdated. We've got contracts, permits. He handed over a folder, smug as a cat with cream. The judge frowned, flipping through it, then held up a page. This deed's backdated. Ink's too fresh. Dates don't line up with county records. Explain that. The lawyer stammered, clerical error, Your Honor, but Frank pounced. Error? It's fraud. Forged to steal Tom's land while he was gone. Look at the video. Lena admits it. The screen flickered to life, Lena's voice echoing through the room. Tom's been a thorn too long. We'll take care of this once and for all. Her face froze mid-sentence, caught in her own trap. Whispers rippled through the gallery. Neighbors I recognized, some nodding, others shifting uncomfortably. Lena's jaw tightened, her fingers gripping the table, but she didn't look up. The judge leaned back, rubbing his chin. This ain't adding up for you, counsel. Mr. Johnson's got a deed older than half this town. Your common land story's thin as wet paper. Frank pressed on, laying out years of harassment. Notes about my mailbox, fake city complaints, the paint can by my garage. They've bullied him for decades, Your Honor, then seized his absence to build this thing. We're asking for an injunction to halt construction, full damages, and dissolution of the HOA for abuse of power. The lawyer sputtered. Dissolution? That's extreme. They're a community asset. But the judge cut him off, eyes narrowing. Asset? Look more like a racket. I'll rule on the injunction now. Rest comes later. He banged the gavel again. Construction stops, effective immediately. Cops will enforce it. Damages and dissolution stay pending, but I'm keeping this evidence close. Relief hit me like a cool breeze, though the fight wasn't over. Lena finally met my gaze, her eyes burning with venom, a silent vow to claw back. I stared right through her, let her try. Frank clapped my shoulder as we left the courtroom, sunlight spilling across the steps. One down, he said, grinning. They're scrambling now. Back home, I found Dave by the fence, watching a cop tape off the site, yellow caution lines fluttering around the pool house frame. Workers cleared out fast, he said, tossing me a beer. Lena's fuming somewhere, I bet. I popped the cap, the hiss sharp in the quiet. Good. Let her stew. She's got bigger problems coming. The yard still looked like a battlefield, torn grass, concrete slabs, but it was mine again, at least for now. I sipped the beer, the cold biting my tongue, and pictured Lena's face on that screen, her lies unraveling. She'd swung big, banking on me folding. Instead, I turned her ambush into my counterattack. That night, I sat on the porch, crickets singing their old tune. The injunction was a win, but the war wasn't done. Damages, her punishment, the HOA's endgame still loomed. I'd fought overseas for less than this patch of dirt, and I'd fight here too. Lena thought she could rewrite my life with a few forged papers and a bulldozer. She learned soon enough this marine didn't break, and this land didn't bend. The next round was coming, and I'd be ready. Weeks after the injunction, Elmwood Heights buzzed with a tension you could taste, like the air before a storm breaks. The half-built pool house sat frozen in my yard, a hulking skeleton of concrete and steel wrapped in yellow tape that flapped in the breeze. I'd walk the fence line each morning, coffee in hand, watching the grass slowly reclaim the torn patches. The HOA had gone quiet. No notes, no knocks, but I knew better than to trust the silence. Lena was out there, licking her wounds, plotting her next move. I'd seen that look in her eyes at the courthouse, pure venom, and it promised to fight to the finish. The final hearing came on a crisp fall day, leaves crunching underfoot as I climbed the courthouse steps again. Inside, the room felt smaller, packed with neighbors craning to see the showdown. Frank stood ready, a stack of files under his arm, while Lena sat stiff at her table, her blonde hair pulled back, blazer swapped for a muted gray suit. Her lawyer shuffled papers, sweat beading on his brow. The judge took his seat, gavel cracking the air, and dove straight in. Johnson versus Elmwood HOA. Damages and dissolution. Let's wrap this up. Frank laid it out like a general mapping a battlefield. Your Honor, the HOA trespassed, vandalized Tom's property, and tried to steal it with forged deeds, caught on tape, backed by records. They've harassed him for years. Fake violations, sabotage, lies to neighbors. We got all. He slid the evidence forward. Dave's photos, Lena's video confession, my deed glowing with decades of truth. We're asking full damages to restore his land, punitive fines for fraud, and the HOA's end. They're a menace, not a community. Lena's lawyer leapt up, voice thin with desperation. This is overreach. The HOA acted in good faith, clerical errors, not fraud. Dissolving us punishes innocent members. The judge raised a hand, silencing him, and turned to the screen. Lena's voice filled the room again. We'll take care of this once and for all. Her smirk flickered, damning her all over. The judge's face hardened. Good faith? This is a conspiracy. Forged papers, recorded intent. I've heard enough. He leaned forward, eyes sweeping the room. Ruling's clear. Tom Johnson owns this land, no question. HOA pays full damages. Removal of that structure, land restoration, all costs covered. Punitive damages, $200,000 for fraud and harassment. Gasps rippled through the crowd. And dissolution. Elmwood HOA's done. You abused power, broke laws, terrorized a man on his own property. It ends here. The gavel slammed, a thunderclap sealing their fate. Lena's face crumpled, hands gripping the table. But she didn't look at me, just stared ahead, a toppled queen in ruins. Frank grinned, clapping my back as we walked out. Never seen a judge swing that hard, Tom. You're a legend now. I nodded, the weight lifting, though victory tasted more like relief than joy. Outside, sunlight cut through the chill, and I breathed deep, free air filling my lungs. Weeks later, crews rolled in, hired with HOA cash, to dismantle the pool house. Bulldozers roared again, but this time they were mine, tearing down concrete, hauling off steel, smoothing the earth back to green. I watched from the porch, Dave beside me, beers clinking as the last slab vanished. Land's yours again, he said, tipping his bottle. Damn right. I replied, the ache in my chest easing. With the settlement, I built a pool, my own, modest but perfect, right where Lena's mess had been, a middle finger to her memory. The neighborhood shifted after that. Folks I'd barely known stopped by. Handshakes, thank yous, even a cake from Ruth down the street. Her eyes misty as she said, you saved us from them, Tom. Turns out Lena's HOA had bullied half the block. Fines for flower beds, threats over bird feeders. I waved it off, just stood my ground, that's all. But their gratitude stuck with me. Elmwood felt lighter now, quieter like it did when I first moved in. No petty tyrants lurking. Lena faced her own reckoning. Fraud and forgery charges landed her in jail. Last I heard, her reign reduced to a cell. I catch old HOA types glaring from their windows sometimes, but I just wave, lounging by my pool, the water glinting under the sun. This land was mine, fought for, won, and worth every scar. I'd built it with my hands, defended it with my grit, and now I'd live it on my terms. The dust had settled, and damn, it felt good to breathe easy again. That's it. Lena's empire crashed, her jail cell clanged shut, and Tom's land bloomed free again, pool and all. The HOA's gone, buried by one man's grit. Thanks for sticking with this wild ride. I hope it fired you up as much as it did me. Here's the takeaway. Your home's yours to fight for, no matter who tries to snatch it. Bullies don't win when you stand tall. Loved it? Drop a like, share your thoughts below, and join me for more tales where justice hits hard. See you next time. Stay strong out there.